right, ladies and gentlemen, well, in the interest of finishing within the boundaries of lunch hour, I'm going to go ahead and get us started here. I want to welcome you to the, I guess this is the fourth or fifth in our series of lectures by faculty at the School of Public Policy. It's kind of an exciting time when we get to see what some of our colleagues are up to. Most of us are so busy between classes and research that it's nice to actually get up to date. Before I move on to today's speaker, I just want to also announce two more sessions. One is on, let me get this right, Monday, March 23rd at 6 p.m. In the classroom right over here, room 188. The Consul General from Azerbaijan, Mr. Alen Suleimanov, I think I got that close, will be speaking to one of our classes, and we want to invite the friends of the university and members of our Pepperdine family to come and participate in that session if you'd like to. He's going to be speaking on where Russia, Iran, and Azerbaijan stand in sort of the dynamics of the policy of the region at this time. So it should be a very compelling conversation. Professor Coyle, who spoke last week actually, is hosting that session. And then next Thursday at this same time, Professor Dennis Robbins will be talking about the ethical substrate of an Obama-inspired health reform system. And so given the conversation on healthcare, that should be another exciting session. So again, I just want to invite all of you back for those sessions. Today's speaker is an extraordinary colleague and scholar. It's such a privilege to have her as part of our program here at the School of Public Policy. She originally hails from South Africa, where she taught microeconomics and econometrics before coming to the U.S. and completing her graduate education at my alma mater, the Rand Graduate School, just down the street here. Her research interests are extremely diverse. I really don't know any scholar who is as accomplished in as many topics and areas as Professor Hawken. Her research, she did the work on California's Proposition 36, the sort of definitive analysis of California's drug diversion program. Her work has included issues in public health, illicit drugs, crime, corruption, and not just domestically. That's what makes her work so striking and so extraordinary. Her work encompasses, her current work on international research looks at issues as diverse as methadone delivery in the Republic of Georgia, as well as developing instruments to measure corruption and gender issues in Afghanistan and in the Asia-Pacific region. And those are all work for the UN. She's spent extensive time traveling abroad, and including going to places like Afghanistan and the Republic of Georgia. She actually has taken teams of students with her on those trips. So she's just an extraordinary colleague and teacher. Her presentation today actually takes a step closer to home, at least halfway across the ocean. And she's going to be speaking to the work that she's doing in conjunction with Mark Kleiman over at UCLA, looking at Hawaii's Probationer Deterrence Program. And the title of her talk today, Improving Probationer Compliance Through Swift and Certain Sanctions, will actually present some of the preliminary insights that they've developed from that body of work, which will be coming out, I guess, next month. So without any more prolonged introduction, I want to welcome Angela.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. There are many familiar faces in the room. Many of my students have been subjected to a lot of this insight already as the classes have unfolded, and I come home with some new information from Hawaii. So some of you will have seen a lot of this before, but particularly welcome to the new faces. I'd be happy to find out who was interested by the topic and is in the room today. Really would like to know what brought you here. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge my funders. Doing research like this is extremely expensive, and it would not be possible without generous support from the two organizations that helped us. First is the Smith-Richardson Foundation, and they funded the randomized controlled trial that I'm going to report on today, as well as the National Institutes of Justice. So thank you to those two organizations. I'd also like to acknowledge my research team. My collaborator, Mark Kleiman at UCLA, was essentially the big initial brain behind the project. He's not an evaluator. He called me in and said, Angela, I hear there's this project in Hawaii. The only problem is the numbers look too good to be true. And my response to him was, Mark, if the numbers look too good to be true, they're probably too good to be true. So I became less interested. I've heard of everybody has a glowing, wonderful program somewhere. So he said, Angela, you've got to go. So it didn't take too much effort to entice me to hop onto an American Airlines flight to Honolulu to try and investigate this project a little more closely. Island Living helped. And what was so surprising and so unusual compared with other criminal justice projects that I've been exposed to It's just how transparent they were. Everybody said, come in and look at us. And if you can find us doing anything wrong, please help us fix it. Now, if you do the same kind of work in California, everyone's doing this. Peeking at you very delicately out of the corner of an eye, because so much is messing with it, and they really just don't want people to know how broken our system is. So it was very, very, very liberating to be visiting a jurisdiction that was that transparent. And immediately I recognized that this was an ideal project to be evaluating, precisely because of the level of transparency that they allowed. So without further ado, let me talk about why you should be in this room and interested in this project, even though it's this little program happening on an island state of Hawaii. We have a huge problem in this state. We have a budget deficit that's out of control, and one of the big drivers of our budget deficit is our prisons. Our prisons are running at close to 2 to 1 in terms of design capacity. We have nearly 2 offenders for every bed space that we were designed to hold. Having really overcrowded prisons is bad for a number of reasons. Well, first of all, it costs all of us, for those of you who actually earn an income, or one day will earn an income, it costs money, and we as taxpayers have to fund people who are in those beds. When prisons are overcrowded, and I'm taking almost all of you who are in this room to prison in a couple of weeks, you'll notice when you go there that there are these gymnasiums with beds stacked 3 high. And guys who are in prison tend to be quirky personalities to begin with. And when you crunch them in so tightly, they tend to behave quite poorly. And they hurt each other and the staff who are there to protect them. So bad things happen when our prisons are so overcrowded, including a huge financial drain to the state. Because our prisons are so overcrowded, the federal government is now fed up with us, and they have said we have to do something about this. It's considered now cruel and unusual punishment, how we are managing our offenders. So the governor has no choice but to act, and he's weighing a number of proposals, including opening the floodgates. So it's very, very likely is over the next few years what we will see is about 50,000 inmates be released into our communities ahead of schedule. Dumping 50,000 parolees into our communities, given how we currently supervise parolees, is a very terrifying thought, because we do such a bad job of community supervision. This is why I'm particularly interested in the Hawaii model, because they've finally gotten it right. It's the first program I've seen across the country, and I know these programs well, that have managed to make a difference in the lives of their offenders such that they behave well. To give some contrast with California as I go through this presentation, I'm going to talk briefly about California's Proposition 36. Now, this was a project that originally got me interested in community supervision. For those of you who don't know Proposition 36, it was implemented in 2001, and it's essentially a prison and jail diversion program. If you're arrested on a non-violent drug charge, you have the option of going to treatment in the community rather than going to jail or prison or probation as usual. And that's, for most offenders, they found that a very good deal, and they'll opt into Proposition 36 and then get managed in our community. When I initially did that work, I gave Proposition 36 glowing reviews, just to let you know up front. A number of years ago, I did the benefit cost analysis that said this was a good idea. And I reported a number, and it said $2.50 saved for every dollar you invested, do more of it. Well, the numbers started to change with time. As offenders realized that they could mess up and there'd be very little consequence, guess what they do? They mess up.